To celebrate Doctor Who reaching 60, I wanted to take a look down memory lane and revisit the first video I made on this channel, which was my top 10 favourite classic Doctor Who stories. So nearly 4 years on, let's take a look to see if my list has changed. Starting off at number 10, this story always excited me as a youngster, as it's one of Doctor Who's first ever stories. It does a great job at unionising our main cast and bringing together the first TARDIS team, which we'll see from this point onwards. The story in question is The Edge of Destruction. This two-parter is set entirely inside the TARDIS and focuses on the relationship of Ian, Barbara, Susan and the Doctor. Still four strangers thrown together at this point, trying to establish their relationship. Now, as I've said briefly, the start of the story, our main TARDIS team are still trying to find their place among the ship. Much like the other two stories, they're still constantly arguing and there's distrust between Ian and Barbara versus the Doctor and Susan. But by the end, the fundamental relationships we see then from this point onwards throughout the show is established. We start to see the moulding of a friendship which then we now as Doctor Who fans have grown accustomed to between a Doctor and a companion. Number 9, Invasion of the Dinosaurs. So, Invasion of the Dinosaurs to me isn't too different from the other Pertwee era Invasion Earth story. But for that reason, I see this six-parter as a summary of the whole Barry Letts / Terrance Dicks time of the show, but with a twist. Obviously, the same components which has been used for the last few years is used again and again. We've got the unit family, we have a monster and some scientists invading Earth, or, trying to make Earth back to the golden age where the dinosaurs are running around. Average sort of third Doctor stuff. And the reason it's with a twist, obviously, is the betrayal of Captain Yates. I think driving a wedge between the members of the unit family, especially now the main cast had started to break up. Obviously, the exit of Katie Manning, Roger Delgado suddenly getting killed. Obviously by this time John Pertwee, Barry Letts, Terrance Dicks were moving on. I think to sum up this story in a few words or a sentence, it's the run-of-the-mill third Doctor story which is probably one of the best times of classic Doctor Who. It creates interesting character developments with our main cast and also introduces elements that will affect the show sort of moving forward, and it naturally wraps up this era of the show. Number 8, The War Machines. The War Machines is on this list mostly for nostalgic reasons. I had the VHS when I was small. But that aside, I feel like this story is another interesting point in Doctor Who's history. The show had started to feel dramatically different from this point onwards. Now I feel like that was because season 3 had started to stagnate. So in order to make the show more current for the mid-1960s, they had to change the pace. Now it's not often we get to see the first Doctor interact in what was then present day contemporary Earth, and the utilisation of location filming around the streets of London, it feels like it's never been done at this point in Doctor Who. So it feels really strange and somewhat different to see William Hartnell and other members of the Doctor Who cast at this point actually filming on location in a suburban area. I was definitely trying to do something new at this point. It was introducing new companions, Ben and Polly. Obviously this does mean there's a side effect. Dodo does get sidelined and completely written out, never to be seen for like the second half of the story, which is a shame. For the War Machines and Votan concept alone, the War Machines and Votan are a concept which becomes ever more relevant. Obviously, the way they're realised in the mid-1960s does sort of make them more of a filler villain and monster of the week. But that aside, I feel like the formula which starts in this story would carry across throughout the rest of the 60s and maybe into the early 1970s. Number 7, The Curse of Fenric. The concept of Fenric alone is the main reason this story makes my list. In terms of power and the way that Fenric has the ability to manipulate events throughout the past 2 seasons of the show, bringing Ace to Iceworld in Dragonfire, making sure she meets the Doctor, and everything we see and probably don't see with Lady Painful from the story Silver Nemesis almost gives me Celestial Toymaker vibes. Everything about this story looks great. The Hemovores prosthetics look really freaky and just quite expensive. And now this is probably the reason because this story is also shot and lit very well. Most of the supporting cast are believable and I think they play their roles within the story very well. To me, this story is everything that Doctor Who does best. You have a base under siege. Sylvester McCoy is running around being as manipulative and dark as ever, as he does in his last 2 seasons. Strong villain and enemies for the Doctor, Ace, and the supporting cast to fight against. Ace obviously getting a storyline of her own. A great monster, a great villain. It just makes... It's basically one of the reasons why I love Doctor Who. Number 6, Full Circle. A little bit of an outlier on this list. Admittedly, I do have the same reasons for liking Full Circle as I do the War Machines. I had the VHS. However, despite this, every time I watch Full Circle, I really enjoy it. The world of Alzarius feels really rich. And that's down to the writing of Andrew Smith and the direction of Peter Grimwade. As a kid, one of the main images that went through my mind when I thought about Doctor Who, which, you know, obviously was all the time, was the location filming at Black Park when the Marshmen are coming out of the swamp at the end of part 1. Plus, I really like Paddy Kingsland's score of this story. My favourite scores of Doctor Who are probably from the early sort of 1980s. And I am a particularly big fan of Paddy Kingsland's scores, particularly from this story Full Circle and Legopolis. Number 5, Revelation of the Daleks. It's no secret the 6th Doctor is one of my favourite incarnations. So to have him go up against the Daleks and come face to face with Terry Molloy, who to me is the definitive Davros, is very well deserved. The Doctor and Perry don't come into the story properly until halfway through. This allows for great character building by Eric Saywood, and we can explore the world and the characters of Necros and Tranquil Repose, and to see how they behave and act under Davros's regime as the Great Healer. We also explore a more darker side of how the Daleks are created through the character of Arthur Stengos, who is slowly being transformed from humans into a Dalek mutant. I don't think the concept of the creation of the Daleks is treated in this way again until the new series, until Series 1, The Bad Wolf and Parting of the Ways. With a Doctor as bright, loud and colourful as the 6th Doctor, the darker storylines, particularly written by Eric Saywood, is a very good juxtaposition which I feel like Doctor Who needs more of. Number 4, The 5 Doctors. Much like the original list, The 5 Doctors hasn't gone anywhere. Full of familiar faces, old friends and enemies alike. This is the Doctor Who equivalent of the Marvel Avengers teaming up. Being set in the Death Zone on Gallifrey, we learn a little bit more about Time Lord mythology, as well as the most feared and famous Time Lord, Rassilon. Also, having the Doctor brought back to his home world often brings him down a peg or two. Having the Doctor separated from his other incarnations is a little bit of a pro and a con. Obviously, as Doctor Who fans, we want to see all the incarnations interact and work together, but having them find their own way to the Tomb of Rassilon gives them equal screen time, and I think it works as well as it could have. Number 3, Terror of the Zygons. These top 3 on my list are sort of on par with each other, but obviously to make the video I had to come to a decision. So Terror of the Zygons stands at number 3. Now this story really marks the beginning of the Philip Hinchcliffe and Robert Holmes sort of gothic romance sort of genre, which would spread across this season and season 14. Obviously they did manage series 12 as well, but just sort of taking over from Barry Letts and Terence Dicks, they were still trying to find their feet. The Doctor returning to Earth and working with Unit again for the last time feels a lot more organic and flows better, I'd say, than Robot. The Zygons as a monster works really well, not just in concept but in reality. Due to the lighting and the way the sequences are shot, which the Zygons appear in, which is mostly on their spaceship, it really makes them sort of more believable as they're lurking around in the shadows. The effects in the story really hold up as well. The stop motion footage of the Scarrison chasing the location footage of the Doctor, I think mixes pretty well together considering it was made 50 years ago. Terror of the Zygons is just a really strong opener and just a really incredible story. Number 2, Earthshock. There isn't another Cyberman story like Earthshock. To my knowledge, I don't think there's another story which treats the Cybermen as well as they've been treated in this story in any other story in Classic or New Who. Malcolm Clarke's score does an incredible job at sort of illustrating the cold, emotionless and military march of the Cybermen. Eric Saywood's structure allows for the incredible Part 1 cliffhanger, revealing the Cybermen to the viewers, yet leaving the cast, supporting cast, all the characters basically unaware until the climax of Part 3. This allowed the tension to build throughout the 25 minutes. David Banks as Cyber Leader gives an incredible performance, especially on the bridge of the freighter. He's very commanding, definitely opposite Peter Davison's Doctor. And of course everything ends with the death of Adric, one of the Doctor's companions. Obviously proving that the stakes in this story are very, very high. There's not many Doctor Who stories which sort of convey a sense of doom from the very start. And with the way that Eric Saywood has written this story and Malcolm Clarke has written the music, it just does an incredible job at sort of conveying a sense of dread. Number 1, The Ark in Space. Moving up 2 places from my list a few years ago, The Ark in Space has reached my favourite classic Doctor Who story. Particularly the omnibus version, which can be seen on the Season 12 collection set, and was also the same version I watched in UK Gold when I was 6 years old. The classic Base Under Siege storylines with the traditional sci-fi tropes of the stark white setting of the Ark, mixed with the alien, organic-looking Wirrn, works very well together. I mean, the Wirrn look very much out of place in its setting, which obviously works as they're supposed to be the invading force that the Doctor and the crew of the Ark are supposed to stop. It's a great second story for the Fourth Doctor and Harry, as the Base Under Siege story is nothing new in Doctor Who by this point. It's safe, it works, but at the same time it does a great job of telling a new story with the same format. Speaking of the Fourth Doctor, one of his most iconic scenes is in this story where he stands in the cryogenic human bay and delivers his speech of Homo sapiens. It's an interesting time for Who at this point. Obviously the baton had been handed over from Barry Letts and Terence Dicks to Philip Hinchcliffe and Robert Holmes. Now these scripts at this point had been commissioned by Barry Letts and Terence Dicks. So you have two different teams, arguably the best classic Doctor Who had to offer. There we go. My new top 10 favourite classic Doctor Who stories. Now if I've planned this video correctly, then it should be going out on Doctor Who's birthday, the 23rd. Meaning that we have a colorisation of the Daleks to watch, which is very exciting. And we've only got 2 days now until the first 60th anniversary special, The Star Beast, comes out. So, happy birthday Doctor Who. If you enjoyed what you saw here today, feel free to subscribe for similar content. If there was a particular video or section of the video you liked, let me know by liking or commenting on the video. Your likes and comments could influence the next topic I talk about. Thanks for watching.